one of the things that I was sure about was that I was a person, and then I wasn't sure about it anymore.
Wow.
It's again the deeper shit.
We'll get into it. I mean,
no, I won't, because it's not my job. I'm a rock star. I'm not supposed about this shit.
Lars, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
What do people know you for?
What do people know me for? People don't know me.
Oh, come on.
No.
Some people know you.
No.
Do you
for a loud laugh,
Ah.
or things like that, for weird behavior at times, for hypersensitivity, for a certain elusiveness of showing up and disappearing and nobody quite knows why. Things like that.
I'm surprised you even showed up here.
Me too.
Yeah. I have to confess, I didn't know if you were actually going to show. It is true. I mean, not that I don't trust you when you say you're going to show up, but it's like, you never know, You're a flexible guy.
Yeah. No, but usually I intend, or I try to also respect others in that sense, that I show up if I say I show up.
Sure. Yeah. And I have this impression that you do like art stuff, or like dance, or visual art, or photography, or body movement more generally, or connecting with nature. These are things that are important to you. Maybe I should, instead of what people know you for, I guess, like what kind of things do you spend your time on? What's important to you?
Yeah, well, I think, I do, to me the whole thing kind of that binds it together is what they call creative process, I guess, so to me, yes, at times I work with visual arts, or with movement arts, or with sound arts, and I was trying since quite a while actually to make links to, or to reveal links to nature and ecological understanding, if you want so.
Yeah. Why is that important to you, nature, ecological understanding?
Because I love nature. It's just a very profound sensation of kin, and so I feel somehow.
This is an interesting word, because I think a lot of people, they wouldn't use this word for nature, even though it is actually quite true. We are part of nature, we are from nature, and yet somehow it feels kind of other. Like a tree is not like us. This is like a conception that I think exists. And I think in the way you're saying it, it sounds like actually it's closer to kin than not.
Yes, and I think it depends also the scenes in which you are moving, because there's quite a scene meanwhile also that where kin and kinship, it's becoming a buzzword. So I would probably predict that in 1.5 years it's going to be more of a buzzword in the mainstream as well. You see, that's usually how things, or how I perceive the language is used, and also how most of people experience, at least in our cultural contexts, that there's, as you say, there's me, and then there's the tree, and there's me, and there's nature. But for example, there are other languages, other ways of perceiving. There's indigenous languages where if you say the word I, this word incorporates the word for land, for example. So every time you say
distinction.
I...
No distinction.
No distinction. It's part of I. So every time you say I, it includes in this word already the land, so to speak. And of course it makes sense. It's if you look at it from a closer lens, then there's no separation.
And this has always been clear to you? Or is this something you arrived at somehow in your life? This way of looking at things where nature is important and sort of central to everything you're doing?
I think it was not always clear. I think originally it was an intuitive sensation that was just there like that. And then there was a reflecting, and also more a socialization. I had the feeling, literally. And then I was just, being a good person, so to speak, and doing what other people do and think the way other people think. And so, for example, when I was in my teens, I was working on the farm of my uncle, and it was, I was just doing what I was told to do, also to nature in the sense, the way you treated the pigs, the way you plowed the field, so I was not reflecting in that sense, no. And I would have said that I love nature, but I would have nevertheless didn't have any emotional access, neither a reflective access to my actions at that time. And that came later, and it came, I think, yes, at some point it came through really quite a crisis, actually, in terms of also physical. So it was most of the time certain periods of suffering that had as an effect a deepening of inquiry and hopefully understanding.
To bring you closer to nature, like suffering in the sense of maybe social encounters or
not closer. That would suggest that you have to get a distance to get closer to nature,
true.
Which is inherently wrong to my understanding.
Yeah, we are in it. Always.
No, we are it. I mean,
we
if
are
you want
it,
to say, I mean, that's that's the kind of, we are what, that's what I'm saying. In 1.5 years, there will be the buzzword, and the meaning is gonna be watered out.
Man, yeah, it's so inherent, automatic, I guess, in the way that I speak. At least it's like I don't even notice it, but I am using these words that totally imply a kind of separation. And what does it feel like, I guess, for you? Do you also struggle with this language stuff, or are you able to avoid it? And do you feel actually pretty, let's say, undistinct or like integrated with it? And what does that feel like?
It feels, I have to say, it feels quite strange to me with the language, or more and more strange, and then quite challenging. And already for me there's a distinction. If I can talk or answer questions, I feel much more comfortable as if I would have to write them down as in a thesis or in, and it's
You prefer writing?
I prefer speaking.
You prefer speaking, okay.
Yes. Because there I have this sensation that there's much more in terms of communicating and exchange, so to speak, than if I would just put things into words. And then also it's true in terms of, if you want to express certain sensations or things, I find it very difficult sometimes to have to use English or German or kind of a language that is based in this kind of perception of different things doing things, or
you call it like object language or something like this, or you like,
I don't call it, but I mean there's a discussion at the moment, or probably since a while. Yes, some languages are more focusing on the subjects, the objects, and others are just more verb-based.
Or is it object knowledge, maybe, or something like this? Or maybe I'm missing the term. It was object knowledge that you used this term to describe. Maybe I'm not clear about that right now. Anyway.
It's it's just quite. If you spend a minute with it, it's quite a fundamental difference, I think. If you live in a world that is basically different, an assemblance of different objects or subjects being animated, or if the focus is on the animation itself, on the process itself, if it's a verb-based language that is going on, where everything is just, so then the relationships between things become more important rather than, the nature of the things of it's how to say.
So you're saying the language makes us describe, first of all, it separates our entire experience into these different distinct things, and also makes us focus, I guess, on describing those things, as opposed to maybe a different kind of language which would just which would start from the idea that everything is inherently connected and it's sort of one thing, and so we're only describing how other things in this one
We're
greater
describing processes, basically.
processes, yeah,
Like, yes.
things that are happening, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Mm.
Yes. Like either transformational processes or processes of perception, stuff like that.
Mm.
I mean, I also, as I say, I'm not a linguist expert or something. So, and sometimes a certain terminology is lacking for me. It's just, that's what I say. It's sometimes poses a difficulty for me to express. That's why I also appreciate the movement, or movement arts, or where it's a nonverbal communication, and and stuff is, once you pay attention, it's becoming very clear that there's movement all the time. You know what I mean?
Can you describe that? Like what kind of movements are we maybe not seeing
Well,
or not acknowledging?
yeah, no. I mean, it's a lot of movements. At this very moment, there's 50 million processes happening just in the body, or if you want to focus on your body, there's movements of your intestines. There's movements of cells and breath, of blood flow. There's movements of electronics in the brain. Or this is 50 million movements happening that we are not, of course, aware of at this moment. And so there's micro movements of your body to kind of deal with gravity and to keep in line, and then it's so many and then you start to widen the perspective towards what we call environment, and then you feel the movement of the wind right now that just took up a little bit, movement of sound waves, if you want. So so is movement constantly. Now I feel movement of wind. Yeah. And also when we talk right now, or if you talk, sometimes you get closer because you didn't really hear, sometimes you back off because it just feels a little bit too close, or whatever, and most of the time you're not aware of that. I think.
Wow. What makes you aware of it? What increases your awareness of this kind of stuff?
To become quiet.
Sitting with yourself.
Well, I guess so. I mean, it's not that I'm, sitting constantly with myself and becoming this really quiet Zen-like dude, but as I say again, there's periods where certain practices seemed necessary, and also there's huge pleasure in it to me, in this sort of dance.
Dance is also something that I think is really, it comes up a lot with you, and you've taught some of us how to dance at the house over there, and yeah, I mean, is it an extension of this for you, like this sort of greater movement that's happening everywhere, or is it some complementary process, or what does it mean for you, dance?
Oh,
it's a very specific kind of movement, I think, is it? Or
well, again, I think you can make it many things. To me, dance is quite a wonderful metaphor for the whole thing. Again, I'm not running around, being in the dance all the time, but if you experience it on certain levels, then that becomes sort of an almost organic realization or organic perception. And so then also in focusing on specific dances, again, it's to me it's a beautiful way of connecting to another, or being with another.
what kind of dances do you do?
I guess there would be three main influences. It would be sort of what they call postmodern dance influences, different dances there, and contact improvisation and tango. And yeah.
And you chose these like very specifically, or did you? How do you end up in this kind of...
Yeah, no, not really actually.
Especially like contact improvisation. I don't even know if I know what that is, but it's probably not something you just find very easily if you learn how to dance or something.
Yeah, no, I had quite a journey there also, and I didn't really choose. I always, or most of the time, I chose what I didn't want to engage in, and that's also, and though somehow then sometimes things popped up. So I had some of my education, so to speak, was in the performing arts, acting and dance.
Okay.
And so in this school context, or there was dance, of modern dance, ballet, jazz dance, this kind of sort of more or less conventional approaches to dance, or what we know is there. And then with the time, I was more interested in also dances that came out of a cultural context. I was living with Cuban people, and so there was a lot of Afro-Cuban stuff going on, and I was really, really interested by it. And there was the rumba, for example, which, there again, that started to meet religion with, really traditions, with African traditions, with mixing with Catholics and all kinds of stuff. And so I was, they were organizing parties, so I got into salsa and rumba stuff a little bit. Then I came back, and I back to Europe, and I wanted, and I was encountering a salsa scene that I didn't feel so interested in. It was more this kind of, pick-up scene of some Latin guys picking up blonde German girls.
Okay.
And so then a friend of mine had started with tango, and that's how I got into tango. So I didn't really came there with a certain intention.
Might move this up just a bit.
Yeah. Yes, and contact improv came with, I think again, a friend was kind of doing it, and yes, I think I went to a jam or something, and then I kind of dove into there quite some years actually also.
So I feel like with dance, listening is also something that's super important. Like you're always, this is something I found interesting, and when you taught us a bit of this tango stuff, it's like listening to like the other person's body, or we should maybe say observing, but I call everything listening, but like how do we listen more? It's somewhat opaque, I think, this idea of like to see something that you didn't see already.
Yeah, I think also I like the term listening, and it's to me it's also quite key in this kind of process. And you will find it also, you find it in the music context with deep listening, with this whole movement in Paulino Oliveros, and so it's a similar thing. And yes, to me also dance is fundamentally a lot about listening. And that to me is also where the whole nature and ecology context comes in. If you know the state of listening through dance, through music, and I think it's easier to apply it also in the natural context, so to speak. And then with time, if you put the labeling a little bit aside of that's a person now and that's a tree, but just listen to the impressions or the sensations, then more and more, I think, basically you'll get to another.
Yeah, it feels a little bit abstract in the sense, like I mean, I think I understand maybe how I could do this, but are there certain, I don't know, like techniques or something that kind of help you if maybe you're not so familiar with this kind of stuff? Like, how would you get into that?
If we sit here now quietly and we start to focus on sense impressions, start with the sound.
Focusing on sound.
Focusing on sound, yes. No. Then you can go into the just physical, like more tactile sensations. You're focusing, feel the grass that you're sitting on.
With your hands or the rest of your body?
Well, at the moment, yes. I feel there's the grass is still a little moist on the foot where my foot is naked, then I have a certain pressure on the thighs, the buttocks, all this kind of stuff. And then you stay with these sensations. I can stay. Then another thing would be then space between you and me, for example. Sense the space. Be aware of the space. Now I touch your arm.
Your hand is cold,
for example.
Yeah.
You know. And after a while, there's also sort of, it's all kinds of stuff happening. Then usually once you touch, so that you can start to become aware of. And you know, I think that's listening, and without necessarily putting it already into categories or judging it, giving, you know, some will be pleasant, some will be unpleasant, but you basically leave everything as it is at the moment, and then so with the time.
Yeah, it sounds like you're just observing.
Yeah.
What's going on.
Yeah.
So this is partially why maybe people call you hypersensitive, in that you're trying to be sensitive all the time.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to fucking be sensitive. I would like to have quite a little bit more coating at times, because it's kind of fucking stressful.
Yeah.
But
like, how do you
it can also be pleasurable.
Sure. No, I'm sure it is. I mean, I think you do enjoy it.
Yeah. I do enjoy it a lot. A lot. I wouldn't. Yes.
Yeah. But like, how do you, like, you're also, you love being in nature, far away from cities, but you're also kind of a city person. And how do you exist in cities with this kind of sensitivity to sound and noise and awareness of everything, as much like trying to increase your awareness of everything that's happening? And
well, I think, I mean, at the time, or at a certain point, you also have to be aware that you don't expand all the time. I mean, as I say, I'm not running around being hypersensitive, trying to sense the grass grow and shit like that. But
let it be noted.
Yes, please. I'm not. But so it, you know, you can also, or I think it's also happening on an organic thing, to really put boundaries in a certain way of stuff that you let in. Sometimes the stuff is so penetrant that I have a very hard time to put boundaries, and it's not working. And so, but in cities, I have to say, I look a little bit like, you know, like little pockets where I feel okay, and I most of the time look for some, like maybe 1, 2 spots, 3 spots where I can feel I recharge. I can recharge there. So I would continuously go back to those, and just kind of, you know, get back into shape and shit, and then can participate in the craziness again.
And what helps you recharge?
You just sit there.
Just some silence, maybe.
Some silence. Oh, you mean what kind of context that would be?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what does it mean to recharge? Like.
Oh, to me, most of the time there would be spots there, where you have, you know, either water or
running water, or the fountain, or a river.
Fountain, yes, maybe that's already the ultimately cultivated form of water, in a certain way. But yes, or, you know, a puddle. No, get one of my preferences is to sit in front of puddles. No, but you know, just little spots where you feel it. Sometimes it's probably not even.
But you're not even talking about necessarily a living space. You mean like maybe just a river, and you can just sit near the bank of a river and just hang out there for a few hours or something.
Exactly. No, not a living space.
Yeah. Okay.
The living space at times can be quite stressful still. And
true. Yeah. In a city.
Yes, and so I'm just saying it's like little spots where you. Yeah. Just can hang out.
This also reminds me that you're kind of moving around a lot. Like, you have this van, and you can actually live out of your van if you want to. You can sleep there, and kind of everything you have is there. But you also find places to live, and you move around in different cities and villages and countries and whatever. Mostly, I guess, in Europe for now. But like, what's it like, just moving around so much and trying to like find your place in different places and establishing yourself and being sort of this like planning around where you have to be and all. What is this life like?
It's not easy. You know, it's because you're.
Was
you're
it a
really,
choice?
Huh?
Was it a choice you made that you wanted to do it this way, or it's sort of a result of like what happened?
Yeah, I would rather see it as a sort of result and organic development of. I mean, you could go in again and say, okay. You know, you could say, okay, I'm such a screwed up guy that I feel a certain alienation all the time, so I cannot really participate, and you know, I have a hard time to. But you could also put the other lens and say, okay, if you know, in a certain way, there, and I'm surely not a singled out person, you know. So I would say that there are certain people that, in a way, experience in an let's put it, because it's another buzzword at the moment, indigenous way. And so if you experience in this way, it's if you want to be respectful or feel a certain respect to kin, love to kin, then to be operating in this cultural and society context is almost impossible, because constantly you will, you know, be forced to deal with processes and patterns that are destructive and exploitative, and not only to what we call or what we experience as environment, but also to people, and to self. And so,
and are you talking just about cities or all kinds of?
No, I talk about cultural setups, you know, cultural belief systems and
so-called civilization and culture.
Yes, civilization in that sense. And I mean, I'm aware that it's a big context, but it is like that. And so, so to me, that's to come back to the thing. It was an organic. You know, I got sick. There were chronic illnesses. And I couldn't function anymore in a certain way,
right.
And so I had to kind of reevaluate what my intention was to function, what I was looking for, what my values were, what I was, you know. So I have really had to look close and stuff, and so with the time, then I gravitated more and more to the margins of it all, and then. And also, yes, it's a tricky thing, but then it's a process also, you know. Because once you really experience yourself or define yourself as this kind of person on the margins, then you are that person on the margins, and then there's the margins, and then there's the mainstream, and you know, and then things become complicated again. So once again, I think a certain awareness of dance as a completely, you know, moving and flexible thing in that sense helps then there, and to kind of once again come to a center that is experiencing positive and negative things, but not emphasizing or staying in this double thing all the time.
It seems also this connection with dance is, yeah, it makes sense to me, because you're also, not only are you doing this moving around, but it also happens spontaneously sometimes. Like, oh yeah, all of a sudden I have to kind of go to like another city, and because I can't be here, it's not working out, and it's like having to respond and react in a spontaneous way. Yeah. And you see it as a kind of dance also.
Yes. Yes. I see the process of me moving as a sort of, again, a listening process. You know, in terms of next. Although I have to say, I think, you know, it is also, it's a result of certain circumstances also. I mean, I have met other people with, no, anyway, don't want to go into. But no, it's, I wouldn't want to promote a certain way of living, neither would I want to say, okay, promote my lifestyle as a sort of thing, you know. Everybody does its own thing in its own, and everybody does its own thing to, I think, trying to do his or her best, and so.
Sure, yeah. I think for my part, like, I also don't mean to like talk about what you're doing in a way that's like you know, this is better, we should be. I just mean that it's like not normal. It's not.
Yeah, it's maybe
it's not so
yeah.
common, and so I think it's useful to talk about things that are hard to find.
Yeah.
Only in that sense. But obviously, everyone makes their own choices ultimately about what they want to do.
Yeah.
And do you see yourself continuing in this way like forever, or do you have some like point at which you're like, okay, at some point, like I don't want to do this anymore?
The point was there already. I mean, it's phases, no? It's all phases. And so
Yeah.
there was a point, for example, where I felt, okay, I want to engage more with others, be more in one place, engage more in structures again, and
Yeah.
on a personal level also. And then pandemic had it.
Right.
But so that's definitely there. And to me at the moment, it's literally the phase right now where I feel, okay, I would want to settle more or create a base more where I don't have to move all the time. I think it's a financial thing also. I mean, there once again, that's another thing that you could say, okay, just get a job and make some money.
Yeah.
But it has been proven quite difficult for me to do this. I mean, yeah. Or I had quite extreme experiences there, and it was the craziness again of the whole thing, and so.
Yeah, I also feel kind of like I'm living on. I wouldn't say it's the margins, but I definitely say that I don't feel like I'm living inside of society in some sense. Like I don't have like, you know, this standard job and I get a paycheck and I have like an apartment and I have so I. Yeah, I mean, it's different from your situation, but yeah, sort of also not really fixed in any place, not mainstream, but I'm okay with it for now, and I think I would also prefer to have some stability at some point, but maybe I haven't reached the threshold yet. But at least in terms of traveling, I'm ready to like not move around so much. I think since like the last 5 years maybe I've been traveling around like quite extensively in different parts of the world, and I felt at some point, maybe like just before the pandemic happened, like I need to pick a place and just kind of be there and figure out a way to make it work, like by like working, which I've avoided. But
why did you avoid working?
Working a kind of salaried job in a company in sort of more traditional way, because I thought once you do that, then you're always just going to be working a salary job in a company. And a lot of people I talk to who do this just describe this trade-off between like flexibility for what you can do with your life, although you get this income, financial security, maybe if you're lucky, and then you're sort of trading it for this ability to kind of do what you want. And I've always been able to make a living just with doing my personal projects and things like this, and so I've never had to get one of these jobs because I was always paying my bills with what I was doing. And I think once you try that, you don't really want to do something else unless there's some specific reason. Like I thought, like at some point maybe I will want to get like a job in some tech company just to understand what it's like to work in a company, because I just don't have that experience, and I think it's something I would like to at least understand from other people's experiences, because I feel like I can't relate to them in any way. I don't know what it's like to send a resume to a company and like do an interview and work with other people, with your manager and this stuff, this business process. Like I have no concept of that whatsoever. And if they need help with that, or if they're having like a hard time with that, like I feel like I have nothing to offer to them in that world. I have other things to offer, but not that. So anyway, so I've avoided it, but I'm kind of open to it, but I'm still also protective of what I consider to be my freedom and my ability to do things whenever I want and just live the life I want to live.
Okay. Do you feel you have an obligation also with your life?
To who? Or to what? For what?
Well, coming back to the interconnectedness of everything, to the surroundings, to nature, to...
I've never used this word obligation, and I think I have a resistance to this word because of coming from certain cultural and religious context around like what one must do and what certain obligations you have to like other people and everything.
Yes.
I think in principle, we all have an obligation to nature, and I understand I'm separating it maybe now, but like
Yeah.
to just continue to use our language because maybe that's what people understand. Like I think we really, like if we don't take care of what's around us, then we won't exist anymore. So if we want to live, we're kind of obligated to take care of our environment, and so that's kind of clear to me. But anyway, I mean specifically about me, I feel I haven't made any specific kind of connections between what I'm doing and how should we call this, like environment. But
Yeah.
I think what I do is I see what I do as holistic in the sense that there's different problems that exist in this world, and some of them I have some leverage over that, and so in the spaces where I have leverage, I'm acting in a way where I think it's productive to either change things or maybe change I don't know, like I can try to inject certain ideas into the technology industry, for example, which is where I'm closer to than maybe most people are. And I don't believe that technology will save us, but I think if we want to actually have a chance at surviving, we need to change our technology, so I'm trying to change something there. Then there's this whole like social barriers that we have now because things are very politicized, and I think I believe in constructing social bridges, people who may be connecting with people that maybe don't share the same politics as you, or perspectives or opinions or whatever, and so I'm doing different things to try and connect with people or help other people connect with people. And so for me, all of this, it all kind of works together in some way, and I haven't really made the connection to how it comes to this tree, for example, but I think like I wouldn't, it feels holistic to me, and I believe it will eventually arrive here.
Yeah.
Although I haven't specifically thought about that.
Yeah.
But I should. Now that I've talked to you, I understand that it's an option for me, so I can start to think about that.
Once again, I think from my perspective, I wouldn't want to push or obligate anybody in
Oblige,
yeah, in any directions or circumstances.
Well, you can say however you want, you know.
Yeah, no, but you know that there's a like just a reciprocity, sort of serving or giving, you know, sensation. And again, I'm very aware of how these terms have been misused in religious contexts, and I think so that's a big challenge also to kind of, you know, deal with these sort of defense.
But I've actually enjoyed this a lot in our previous exchanges, where you've tried to connect, like it's almost like you try to connect everything back to like here, you know, this space that we're in, or this land, or the trees, or the birds, or it's foreign to me, but I think it is vital. I think it should be an obligation, but maybe we're not there yet to really understand what that even means or how. But I think it's somewhere where it'd be useful to go there, because it's super productive to just create some kind of regenerative way to live as opposed to a destructive one. And I think as humanity is probably being kind of pretty destructive in a lot of ways. Like I'm not even going to say mostly, but you know, there's a lot of things that are happening because of humans, and it's destructive to the place. It's destructive for humans. So we can say it like that. But yeah, I enjoy this. How you try to bring it here in so many different ways, and including this app space which I inhabit. You know, I don't hear people trying to bring nature into the way apps are built and designed or technology is conceived, and so you had different ideas about this, and we can get into kind of any of them, but one that I remember is more to do with different sizes of, or maybe to get away from this conception of doing everything globally, having a global concept for, like, an app does something and the whole, like, you know, the whole entire population of the planet is on the same space. To think of it with the scope of, like, maybe a village, or you assume that even the entire body of people that you're dealing with in a given app is really just in the scope of a village, in the sense that we're really living in these villages as opposed to like this giant planet. Like, do you have any reflections on that, or other reflections about like apps and how to connect with nature? Or
most of the time I have the sensation that the apps are there to make my life better or make our life better. And so there's always a sort of still sort of maximizing paradigm, or better, faster. Somehow it's still there, and even if it's just healthier or you know, this kind of stuff. But there's this dynamic. It's a certain notion that's so deep in the culture.
progress.
Progress. Thank you very much. And so I would find it curious to see, okay, what would an app look like that would at the same time be born out of an understanding of reciprocity with the other than human world. You know what I mean? In that sense. And just, yeah.
What would an app look like if it was made to encourage us to coexist with our surroundings, with our non-human surrounding?
Well, yes, but I think it's a tricky thing always. It's all in this whole debates, because, you know, very often, or let's say you're in a relationship with a partner, if you want the other to change, it's always tricky, isn't it? So there'll be a process necessary where we can, you know, we can meet each other. So it's an organic sort of process that has, again, to do with self-understanding. And most of the time, if you really want the other to change, because even if you see that the other is in a destructive context, then it's very difficult to kind of try to encourage the other to. What would an app look like that encourages my partner to stop drinking?
All right, it's hard enough to change people, and
yes.
So as apps, it's maybe even harder to change.
Yes, and so it's I think it's a tricky thing there.
But you asked the question. I mean, you don't think it's futile to ask the question. I mean, you think that there's some idea that we can. You think that there is some way where we can approach creating technology where the result will be some kind of better connection with our environment. And
I truly think only if the technician has a self-understanding of kinship. Only if it's a profound felt understanding that he or she, or whatever they want to define themselves, is relative to all that is around. Only then. If this is not being felt psychologically, emotionally, any technology will be not working. And so then in the end, probably technology itself, you know, it will probably get another meaning. Plus technology, I mean, there's all kinds of different technologies. It's not, you know, I mean, there's digging sticks. That's a certain sort of technology. And
there's language.
Yeah, you know. But I really think that's why when I was doing a project where I tried to integrate art psychology in education, I had called it, and I was trying to facilitate certain understandings of the processes we're talking about by artistic and performative means and stuff towards a deeper ecological understanding. Mm-hmm. And because I had the feeling if this is not really realized profoundly, then it just keeps perpetuating. But then again, I think it's. I mean, probably then it comes back to grace. You know, either
grace
in the sense of, okay, a certain understanding will instill itself. It's not that I instill it in you or anybody instills it in you. But I think it's a lot in this doing thing once again. I do something, like in order to achieve something. You see, I think if that's a very strong dynamic in our culture. Always, we can always do something. We're doing something. We improve ourselves, or we do something too. We fix problems. We do something all the time. And so if you change it around and you start to listen, it's also a doing, but it's a different doing. Then you come, it's like what they come from a Taoist concept, what they call Wu Wei, or in the martial arts. It's doing by not doing. It's staying open to impulse that arises, to grace that arises.
Now the question I want to ask is, so then what are you doing? But
you're allowing the appropriate action to come forth. You're allowing the appropriate movement to come forth. You're allowing to be the dance rather than dancing. I'm doing this now, I do this movement, I do...
You think that this way of seeing things leads to a more conducive way to live, and I might even agree with this. I mean, I think it's a good idea, and yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that abstract. It is kind of abstract, I will confess.
No, I mean, sorry to interrupt, another thing is this whole, I mean, of course, the term mindfulness comes about, if you mind, that's what's described. Isn't that what mindfulness is describing? You're mindful of what is happening. But again, very often you find also in the culture that the mindfulness is being used to improve your health, to be
right,
instrumentalized.
Yeah. And so this is what I'm trying to understand. Like, what's the difference between this kind of mindfulness and the sort of doing by not doing?
The difference is that you do not have an objective in that sense, and that results ultimately also by an inquiry of self. Who is doing?
You don't have an objective means you're not trying to achieve something or accomplish something. You're just letting things happen.
In a way, yes, but not in the sense that, peace out, just everything, But you participate. You're aware of obligations. You're aware of that stuff. You're aware, you live in an animate world. Mm-hmm. But you put yourself in a different position, not in the top of the hierarchy that you can influence everything at any time. Your health and the other and the field and this
objects,
but it's a different hierarchy. There's no hierarchy in that sense. You reposition yourself in that sense already, and you from there you move with impulses that come from perceived outside and impulses that come from inside. I think it has to do once again with self-understanding. If you're an individual person living in a world, then that's stressful and difficult.
Are there any projects by other people that you find inspiring that you'd like to share?
It's lawyers. They're called Earth Client or Client Earth. So that's how they're called, for example. So talking about what would an app look like that works for nature, so to speak, or for And these are lawyers that work for what is called Earth rights, or trying to support processes in that direction. Or it's a whole Earth jurisdiction movement in a certain way. So that's, I find it has a certain leverage. So stuff like that I find inspiring. And they started in England, and they have been, have offices now in different cities and states. That was one initiative that I found interesting.
You want to share any other ones?
There's a writer I recently was reading and then watching podcasts and watching videos. He's called Tyson Yunkaporta, and Australian Aborigine, and he wrote a book is called basically it's about indigenous knowledge and indigenous ways of seeing and how that could help or support processes that are necessary at the moment. And I like his ways. I can relate to him a lot in a certain way. He curses a lot. Anyway. He's just like, he's a funny guy, but very sharp. So it's a pleasure. Yeah.
Where can people find out more about you?
Well, I have a website. It's called passiveactivism.net. So they also can get in touch if they want to.
Are you on social media?
Yes, I'm on Instagram and also on Facebook. On Instagram it would be Lars Schmidt org. And same, I guess, on Facebook, Lars Schmidt.
Great to chat with you, Lars. Thanks for being here.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Two soft-spoken motherfuckers.
That's right. That's what the world needs,